Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Steven Universe Retrospectives, and today we're going to be discussing episodes 69 and 70 of Steven Universe, Sadie's Song and Catch and Release, and we've got a kind of a 50-50 kind of vlog for today, as one episode that we're going to be looking at is kind of a filler episode, while the other is back to plot important stuff. So in this case, let's talk about the filler episode. For the case in Sadie's Song, what's going on is that Beach City is going to be hosting this festival called Beachapalooza, which is essentially this big entertainment festival, which is where various citizens of Beach City will get up on stage and just perform. Basically just do whatever. It's basically just a glorified talent show. Pretty much everybody goes up there, does some kind of routine, entertain the masses, gets applause, move off, and move on to the next one. Steven is handing out flyers for the event, and as he's doing it, he ends up going to the Big Donut and wants to put up flyers around there, but as he goes in there, he finds that the place is seemingly deserted. Well, again, seemingly. As he looks in the back, he ends up hearing the radio playing, and he sees Sadie as she's putting up boxes, and she's singing along the song playing on the radio. And she's actually really good. Steven ends up surprising her in the back, and he ends up praising her singing and thinks that she should perform in Beachapalooza. Well, Sadie is reluctant, but at the very least, Steven does talk her into at least singing the song for her performance. As such, Steven ends up going back to her place with her, and he wants to know what to do, and he wants to know what she wants to do for her performance. And basically she wants to try and keep it like small and just kind of her own thing that make her feel comfortable. But as she goes along, as she and Steven are talking about it, they end up hearing the door upstairs opening up and stomping, which causes Sadie to freak out and tell Steven that maybe they should do this another time. At which point the stomping seems to go to the door of Sadie's room, and when the door opens, we soon learn that the person that came in was Sadie's mother, who it turns out was the mail lady that replaced Jamie all the way back in the episode where Jamie had the hots for Garnet. And yeah, apparently she's not just the mail lady. Apparently she outranks Jamie. I don't know. Bottom line, she works at the post office. And she's here, and the reason she's here is because she got off work early, and she's here to deliver something to her daughter, in this case a plushie, which apparently Sadie collects. I put in air quotes, I'll explain later, but pretty much she's just dropping one off for Sadie. As such, Sadie's mom, whose name is Barb, wants to know what Steven is doing there, and Steven lets it slip that he and Sadie are planning for Sadie to sing at Beachapalooza. And the instant that her mom hears this, well, she starts going nuts, and she insists that she help Sadie and Steven out with the performance. And she immediately so Barb and Steven immediately get to work trying to build up the performance, to make it bigger, better, grander, something that'll be able to entertain the masses. And all the while, it's clear that Sadie has essentially become a hostage in this performance, as while Steven and Barb are planning everything out, Sadie is clearly kind of on the outside looking in. As during a montage where Steven and Barb are planning out the performance, Sadie tries to offer input, but then gets kind of pushed aside when Barb and Steven start throwing out their own ideas for choreography, for style. Pretty much, even Sadie's looks ultimately become not something that she's comfortable with, as they give her heels that she has trouble walking around in. Instead of regular comfortable clothes, she's wearing a dress. She basically they straighten out her hair, just doll her up in makeup, and even as they're getting ready for her to go into the performance, Sadie is so embarrassed that she thinks maybe you shouldn't, when you sign me up, maybe you shouldn't use my name, and they interpret this as, you want to be a mystery guest, that'll be perfect. And so sure enough, Beachapalooza does come up, and Sadie's got butterflies something fierce, and unfortunately Steven and her mom are not helping, as they keep trying to hype her up, so to speak, and basically it's just making her more nervous. And even when Mr. Smiley, who's organizing the event, tries to help get Sadie into the right mindset by saying a little smile goes a long way and so forth, again, it's just causing Sadie to go nuts. As such, when her mom steps away to go get more glitter, because they're trying to douse her sorry, dry throat. As they try to douse Sadie in glitter and then run out, Sadie has a breakdown and tries drinking water, which When she drinks it, it messes with her lipstick, and when Steven tries to reapply it because, oh, Steven's here to help, this causes her to finally just freak out and dunk her head in the water, ruining her entire makeup. As such, Steven wants to know what the hell's going on, and Sadie yells at him, "You're just as bad as my mom." Just as Sadie's mom comes back. At which point, Sadie then pretty much just unloads on both Steven and Barb. It turns out that this is not the first time that Barb has done something like this. It turns out that for every major interest that Sadie has had in her life, Barb has essentially taken that interest and then taken it over, pushing that interest to the extreme. Like when Sadie has shown interest in swimming, suddenly she's a competitive swimmer. She wants to join softball. Suddenly her mom turns into a soccer mom, well, soccer in air quotes there, who wound up punching out a coach, and every year she keeps getting softballs and catcher's mitts for her birthday. And even this Sadie only agreed to this because she just kind of wanted to be like a small performance, something that she could just do for fun and then just move on. But unfortunately, Barb and Steven essentially took this over and turned it into something much bigger than it was supposed to be, and as a result, it's just stopped being hers. And once Barb hears this, she does try to defend herself, saying that it's like, I just want everyone to see how special you were, but Sadie says, this is not me. And so Steven, when he realizes, no, you're right, this is just what I wanted, he decides to make amends to this by taking Sadie's place. And by that I mean he literally just dons the costume and the makeup and goes up on stage and sings the song she was going to sing. I found it weird, but whatever. Well, during the song at least, we do see Sadie and her mom talking, and I actually do kind of like that, though we don't hear what they're saying, and the episode ultimately does end with going back to the big donut as Sadie is sitting in the back room with Steven is playing on his ukulele, and she's just singing calmly and comfortably and nothing big, just her enjoying herself. It's a nice, and I like it, so. Yeah, that was one. Now, but what about the plot important episode? Well, let's talk about Catch and Release. And in this case, Peridorrito kidnaps Steven. Yeah, that's how the episode kicks off. Steven is getting ready for bed, and when he jumps in, he says goodnight to all the stuffed animals. He sees Peridorrito at the end of his bed, though he can't make her out because she's in shadows, and the instant he lets his guard down, she just grabs him and warps to the galaxy warp. Why? She wants him to fix the homeworld warp, which he has managed to reassemble, but unfortunately, it's still not functional. As such, she knows that Steven was able to repair Lapis's gem using his healing spit, and so she wants him to do it for the warp. The only problem is, it's still not working. And even when Steven does try it, all he really does is just get some of his saliva on the thing. At the end of the day, it doesn't work. And so once Peridorrito realizes that this is a bust, she just kind of has a breakdown and starts talking about how she's going to die, how she realizes she's doomed. She's going to die on this planet. And she just starts pretty much just kind of has a little, like I said, she has a freak out. Steven tries to calm her down and say, "Look, no, it's okay. Earth's not all that bad. You can get used to living here." And Peridorrito says, "No, I don't care. This was my last chance. I've tried everything else. All of it failed. And it doesn't matter what Earth is, it's not going to be anything soon," which does confuse Steven, but ultimately his talk with Peridorrito comes to a halt as the gems end up warping in, as the gems warp in to perform a rescue. Peridorrito once again tries to make a retreat, but at this point all the battles with Peridorrito have paid off, as the gems now have experience on their side and thoroughly start whooping her ass. She tries flying away, Amethyst gets the whip out. She tries electrifying it, Garnet intercepts the electricity and throws it back at her in full. And just as she's ready to attack, she desperately starts pleading for her life, saying that you need me, I'm the only one that knows about before she can finish the sentence, she's backed into a corner, and Garnet ends up crushing her body, causing her to poof. Though, strangely enough, her gem is not the only thing that gets left behind. As it turns out, her arms and her legs weren't actually part of her body. Although this does prompt the gems to just push it into the ocean. So, as such, Garnet bubbles Peridot's gem and warps it back to the temple, and so they think all's well that ends well, right? Well, not really. Steven is still a little concerned because he thought that he realized Peridot was afraid of something. but and if this was something that was most likely important, but but she never got the chance to say what it was. So Steven, well, he begins wondering what it was, and so he does want to talk to Peridot, and he wants to get the chance. And so as he verbalizes this, his gem reacts and opens the door to the temple, specifically again Rose's room. As such, Steven goes into the room and wants to talk to Peridot, and while the room initially creates like a fake Peridot that talks all the way up to when she got poofed, Steven does remember back from all the way back in the Together Breakfast episode that there was a section of the temple that passed through the room that went to the basement where all the bubbled gems were. And so Steven has the room reveal that, which again I do like that little callback. And so he goes down, and so he takes the and so he once more rides down the tube to the top. He rides down the tube to the gems to the basement, and while he does end up landing on his side and hurting himself, he does eventually manage to find Peridot's bubble. And so as such, he manages to pop it, and Peridot reforms, and it's clear that she has not had any recollection of time passing, as she immediately finishes her sentence to the gems by saying, "The cluster, you half-form traitor Megaclods." And we soon see what Peridot looks like without the limb enhancers. She's an adorable little shorty. I'm not even kidding. The first time I saw her in her short form, it was honestly kind of adorable. Like, it was like you're so used to seeing her in the limb enhancers and tall legs. It made her look more, I don't want to say battle ready, but it did make her look a bit more regal. She kind of had a more scientific air. She definitely had the air of a more, I don't want to say well spoken either. Essentially, someone who is smart. Essentially, has like a scientist. Someone who basically was a techie. Someone that worked in the lab, so to speak. She would definitely give her the more regal look. Definitely give her the more regal, smart look. I'm missing the words here. I'll probably remember it when I'm done recording. But basically, it definitely gave her a more brainy air, so to speak. Like, she definitely belonged in the lab and that she was a techie, especially with how the fingers of her arms pretty much act as her computer screens. But however, when you see her as a shorty, as Steven says, she's so cute. Like, she's so small. She's got like little green arms. She's wearing the same outfit as before, but without the limb enhancers. They kind of look like pajamas. It's kind of adorable. She went from looking like a genuine threat to just this little green adorable gremlin, and I love it. It's adorable. And well, but unfortunately, even without her limb enhancers, she's still being very difficult. As when Steven tries talking with her, she just starts smacking him. I'm not even kidding. It's hilarious. Like, she gets into a slap fight with Steven, and Steven has to try and calm her down, but she's not going for it. And he even manages to get her with the "what's that on your shirt" thing before flicking her nose. And eventually, he does manage to calm her down enough for her to start talking. And we soon learned from their conversation what Peridot was on Earth to do. It turns out Peridot didn't come to Earth with the intent of jump-starting a new invasion. No, her job was a recon mission. Put simply, she was sent to Earth to check on something called the cluster. It wasn't basically whatever the cluster was. She was supposed to check on its progress, report back, just a quick in and out, simple mission, right? Well, unfortunately for Peridot, she kept getting interference from the gems, and as a result, the mission kept becoming more and more complicated to the point where she had to resort to other means to do it. She tried warping to Earth. Well, they destroyed the warp pad. She sent the flask robinoids. They destroyed they destroyed those, and they destroyed the means of accessing the kindergarten, and while destroying that, and exposed themselves. So she resorted to more direct methods. They crashed her ship, and yes, that did allow her to go in and do her mission. But unfortunately, now she's stuck on Earth, and so she has no way of getting off, and she's still freaking out about the cluster, stating that once it emerges, everybody is going to die. As such, Steven wants to know more about what the heck this is, but unfortunately, Peridot is. That's all. Basically, the cluster. That bit of information is also Peridot's going to give, as she gives Steven the same flick treatment that he gave her, and she manages to get out of the temple. Unfortunately for her, as she runs out to Steven's home, there are the gems right in the kitchen, watching Amethyst eat a pizza box. As such, the gems immediately go into the attack and chase after Peridot before she can get out of Steven's home, and they manage to corner her in Steven's bathroom, with her running inside and locking the door. As such, the gems immediately want to know what the heck's going on, how did Peridot get out of the bubble, and Steven comes clean that he did it, and that the reason he did it is because he thinks Peridot knows something, and it's something that makes her afraid. And it obviously doesn't have to do with them. It's something bigger, something that's gotten her more terrified. So he thinks and so while the gems don't like it, they realize that if Peridot has valuable information that they need to know, sadly, they have to deal with her. They cannot poof her. But at the same time though, they're not on good terms with her either. She is not willing to talk to any of them, including Steven. And as such, while she is openly insulting them and calling them war machines, that they may have won the war, but the battle is hers. She makes it clear at the same time she keeps rubbing it in their face that she has information that they want, and sadly they can't do anything to her if they want to get the information. So yeah, essentially the crystal gems are stuck between a rock and a hard place. 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. Puppy wanted to leave. Anyway, as I was saying, essentially the gems are stuck between a rock and a hard place, and as night turns to day, well, they're still mulling about what they're going to do to try and get to talking to Peridot. But as they're doing this, Steven has got to get ready for the day. As such, he goes to the bathroom, and while Peridot's still willing to let him in, he offers her an olive branch as he presents her with the foot that the gems managed to get when they cornered her on the ruined gem ship, which Peridot does quickly take, and it seemingly does allow the olive branch at least gives Steven some leeway, as Peridot leaves the door to the bathroom unlocked and allows him to come in and wash up. Though, as he's doing it, she's keeping an eye on him the whole time. And she begins asking questions about stuff in the bathroom, like, is that a weapon? Is that a weapon? So on and so forth. And Steven does provide answers, and the whole time the Peridot's just... It's clear she's on edge. But Steven does reassure Peridot that he does believe that, yeah, she's scared. He knows she's scared. He may not know what the heck's going on, but he will... Hold on one more second. Again, sorry about that puppy stuff. Anyway, as I was saying, Steven reassures Peridot that, yes, he knows he's scared. He knows she's scared and uneasy, but he assures her that whatever is troubling her, whatever the problem is, he thinks that he and the crystal gems can help. And while Peridot does doubt that they'll be able to do anything, she does at least reiterate that she appreciates the sentiment, and the episode ends with Steven asking her to move aside because she's sitting on the toilet and he kind of needs to use it. So, yeah, that's the end of that episode. So, what are my thoughts on both? Well, again, let's start with Sadie's song. Sadie's song is, like I said, a filler episode, but it's another one. But honestly, it's a good one. Again, Sadie as a character is one that we've seen is a nice character we've seen before, and so it's nice seeing more of her life and how she typically does things. Because of the characters we've seen in Beach City, she's the one that's the most, I want to say, normal. Like, I'm not saying that the rest of the Beach City characters are like very off-putting, but at the very least, she seems like the everyman in that regard. She's like, yeah, she can be nervous, she can be quirky, she can be just kind of she can be private, but she can also be social. She's a very nice character in that regard, and so episodes that usually center on her usually just about the trials and tribulations in her life as she tries to maintain stability and ultimately but also has to deal with some of the craziness Case in point, this episode. This episode has her essentially clashing with Steven and her own mother for the right to essentially do her own thing. And while I don't know if I can completely sympathize in that regard, I do. Here's the thing: when it comes down to storylines about characters being forced into something they just don't want to do, I find myself empathizing with them, like, a lot. Like, for whatever reason, whenever I see someone put in a situation where they have no agency, have no say in what's going on, and are just pretty much forced forward by the whims of others, it strikes a chord with me. Like, it hits that little spot in my brain that says no. Just no. And as such, the more a storyline like that goes along, whether it be a story of someone relating something back to me or a story in fiction, the more I just feel like the more I feel the fuse in my brain gets shorter and shorter. Because, quite frankly, stuff like that pisses me off. it really does get to me when I see a character clearly not enjoying themselves, but they're consistently pushed forward into something that they want nothing to do with. It honestly gets to me. And so when I watched this episode the first time, and even now, I really did feel for Sadie, as she really is. It's clear that when it comes down to this sort of thing, she's nervous. She doesn't know, like the only reason she's doing it is because Steven convinced her. But even then, all she really wants is to just make it something she can enjoy, something that won't give her butterflies. In this case, she just wants to do something small, something that she's comfortable doing, something that's not too big or won't cause her to just start freaking out. But unfortunately, the instant her mother enters the fray and starts taking over everything, you start seeing her. You start seeing her losing investment in the project, as her wishes are just little by little, as just one by one, ignored. She wants something small. Her mother and Steven want to go big. She wants to have a plain costume. They make her something extravagant. Rather than having comfortable shoes, they keep giving her more and more steep high heels, which, yeah, Sadie is clearly uncomfortable wearing. And even when she is clearly nervous and not upset, Steven and her mom really are kind of blind to her feelings. When Sadie is just freaking out, instead of Steven and Barb trying to calm her down, it's like, no, no, it's okay, it's still your show, you can do it, you're great. Instead, they keep trying to hype it up more, and quite frankly, shit like that annoys me. Because while for some people hyping it up can be a motivator, like they're thinking, okay, yeah, it's so big, I gotta go big too. For some people, that shit can stagnate you. It can emotionally paralyze you. And so when someone keeps pushing it, thinking that that's what's going to make you go forward, make you go all the way, make you put on your best show, for other people, it's the one. For more other people, it's like putting more weight on a. It's like putting a pile of cinder blocks on a thin piece of wood. Eventually, it's going to snap. And that's what happens with Sadie. As the episode continues going along, you see her getting more and more uneasy, upset, as Steven and Barb continue making the show less and less about her and more about being big, being extravagant, being a show. Not it's You can see it having an effect on her. And the more Steven and Barb just start ignoring her feelings, the worse it gets. To the point where the only way that they did listen is when she finally snapped at them. And to be fair, I felt I did like that. I did like the snap, believe it or not. Because I genuinely do like when, in these scenarios, when the character finally just says, enough, I'm not doing this. I can't do this. It's not me. And what I do like, and one of the things that I do like, is that Steven and Barb were clearly blind to what Sadie was going through. Once they do realize what they were doing to Sadie, well, they're more than willing to listen, which at the very least, I like that. I do like that, and it's what keeps me from actually hating the episode. Because one of the things that I do like about these types of stories is the blow up, believe it or not. When the character who is suffering finally gets a word in and pretty much tells off the people who have been controlling everything and tells them, no, this isn't me, I don't like this, knock it the hell off. Because when the people that are pushing this are people that genuinely care about your well-being, at the very least, at that point they're willing to listen. Because while they are blind to your concerns, when they actually okay, that's actually kind of a problem when I think about it. The fact that they were so blind before really does showcase that they were thinking more about the performance and the person behind it. But at the very least, I do like that once that's made bare that Sadie was not enjoying herself, that she was not having a good time, and that that Barb and Steven were pretty much just pushing their vision of what this should have been onto Sadie rather than letting Sadie decide how it went. At the very least, they do decide. They are understanding. Steven takes over the performance because, hey, this was his vision, and Sadie actually gets a moment in with her mother. At the very least, I would have liked to have heard the conversation between them as they had their conversation while Steven was singing. Which, to be fair, the pop song they actually have for the song is original and actually nice and actually catchy. I do like that. I do like it. But at the very least, that's actually one of the things that keeps me from genuinely hating these episodes, when things finally come to a head. And I think what happened with Sadie really did make sense, because sometimes the people that love us do things that do get to us. And while we want to be concerned for their well-being, like I said, piece of wood, cinder blocks, snap. Eventually, there's got to be a breaking point, and they do need to realize and they do need to realize that if they want to help, that maybe they need to back off and let the person who's actually performing decide how they want to perform. And before you tell me that entertainers usually need to go big to draw attention, in the case of Sadie, she's not trying to go big. She just wanted to do something she enjoyed. It's like if someone took these vlogs that I do and then told me, well, you need to have more clips in here. You need to do this, you need to do that, and started changing things around. And I'm not going to tell you that you have to like these vlogs the way they are. As I mentioned, these vlogs are completely unprofessional. I don't have a script, and I don't even have any notes on me. I'm not going to tie you down and say, love these vlogs or I'm going to find you. But at the very least, what I do here is something that I am comfortable with. And I don't expect these vlogs to be big. I don't expect them to be big. I don't want them to be big. I do them because I like doing them. That's exactly why I do them. They're for fun. I don't do them to be anything big. And the instant someone else has full dictation over what happens in these vlogs, it can start to feel like it isn't my baby anymore. And I'm not saying that to denote any criticism towards these vlogs. I'm not. If there are aspects you don't enjoy, then talk about what you don't enjoy about them. I once had a friend who watched my vlogs and told me that maybe I need to be more structured about them, and that maybe I should take notes. And you know what? That's their prerogative. And if they're still watching this, I am so sorry. I am not trying to insult you. I am not trying to insult you. I'm sorry. I'm genuinely sorry. I am not trying to be. I'm digging myself into a hole right now. I need to stop. My point is, I do these vlogs because this is what makes me comfortable. And the instant that someone else tries to push their own vision of how the vlog should typically go, it's little by little so it would stop feeling like it's my baby, and that I'm just kind of acting out someone else's show. And that's what's happening with Sadie. And again, I'm not saying this to denote any criticism toward these vlogs. Criticize all you want. Even I know these vlogs are kind of stupid. But like I said, I enjoy them. But I'm getting off topic again. Back to Sadie. My point is, it had to be, at the end of the day, what Sadie had to do had to be something she was comfortable with. Yeah. And that's why the end of the episode, I think, worked well. Sadie was back in an environment that she was familiar with. It was something that she could feel comfortable with. And so as such, you know that the next time that she goes on a stage, if she ever goes on a stage again, it's going to be under her terms, and it's going to be something that she feels comfortable with, not something that someone else pushes. It's something that she has to enjoy, which I like that, and again, while the build up to that does kind of get to me, at the very least, I think the blow up is kind of what makes it worth it. It's like a slow burn in that regard, and when things finally do come to a head, it does make it worthwhile to see the people who push it kind of get chewed out and finally realize, oh, we kind of effed up there. So I like that, and that's what I kind of like about the episode. I like the slow burn. I like seeing Sadie and her dealing with all this crap. I like seeing her eventually kind of tell Steven and her mother off, and for both Steven and Barb to realize, okay, yeah, we probably should have listened to you. And ultimately, I think that's what makes the episode worthwhile. So there you go. As for Catch and Release, this is once again the start of another story arc, and this one does span a few episodes. In this case, we get to see the beginning of Peridot's redemption, which I'll go into more detail as the story arc goes along. But at the very least, it's a nice little beginning. This Catch and Release doesn't really give us a lot when it comes to Peridot's eventual redemption, but it does fill in a few holes. Not all of them. In fact, in some cases, it does leave some open. Case in point, we finally see Peridot get caught. And like I said, when the gems do actually fight Peridot, you can see that the various battles they've had with her have actually taught them how to deal with her. She has not adapted her strategy, so they've in turn adapted theirs. She tries new things. She's tried various stuff on them before, and so they found ways to counter it. So I do like that they've actually taken their experience and used it to finally take her down and beat her. So I like that, and at the very least, I also like that we get answers as to why Peridot came to Earth. We still don't get we still don't get all the answers, as when she says that she was just on Earth to check the cluster, we still don't know what the cluster is. It's clearly something important, something big, and it's clearly something so big that it's made Peridot afraid. But by that very same token, we do finally get answers onto that, and it's still a step in the right direction. And yes, I know I said step when when the next thing I'm going to be talking about is her foot. That was an accidental pun. Do not bring it up. I will. If you do, I will find you. But the point is, it does start giving more answers. And one of the things that helps show, and one other aspect of what helps Peridot's eventual redemption is that is that she's taken down a peg. In this case, when she's finally let out of her bubble and now she's made and her form is restored, well, she no longer has the advantages that she did before when she came to Earth. She has quite literally been disarmed, as her limb enhancers were just tossed into the ocean. She has no weapons, no backup. She is just on her own and now is stuck dealing with the enemy in the case of the crystal gems. And the crystal gems sadly cannot do anything to her at this point because she has information that they need. And so it leads to a stalemate. And so both sides can't really do anything to the other. Peridot is powerless, and the gems can't do anything to her without risking losing the information she has. So it kind of just becomes a stalemate. But what ultimately starts putting dents in the hard wall that both sides use to divide each other is Steven. Much like with Lapis Lazuli and how she was friendly towards Steven but not the crystal gems, Peridot starts showing more of a friendlier side to Steven, because unlike the gems, he doesn't treat her with hostility. And that's kind of a case in point from the very moment they first talked. Yes, Steven has fought her on occasion, or actually not on occasion, he's fought her before, but even during those encounters, he was never openly hostile towards her. He was actually he actually treated it in some ways like it was a game. But in this regard, when he sees and what makes it better is that while the other gems just see Peridot as the enemy, like when they first encounter her, and Steven brings up that maybe she seemed afraid, Garnet just writes it off saying, "Oh, those are just the bad ratings of a gem who was cornered." Or when she locks herself in the bathroom and Steven mentions she's afraid, the gems just say, "Oh, no, we know she's afraid. She's afraid of us." No, I do like that. Steven actually takes time to listen, and it's another thing that helps showcase Steven as the heart and brain of the group. The gems only see Peridot as the enemy, someone they need to take down. And even when they realize she has information that they need, it's not really a matter of trying to talk the information out of her. It's literally just essentially hostage negotiations. It's like you got two sides of a battle who don't like each other, but they don't want to fight anymore. They're both still hostile to each other, and thus when peace talks start, they can't really go anywhere because neither side wants to deal with the other. It's a similar case with the crystal gems and Peridot. Neither side wants anything to do with each other, so neither side is making any progress. But at the very least, Steven is the one who offers an olive branch. When he goes to Peridot in the morning and wants to use the bathroom, what's he use the peace offering? Her foot. He is not hostile towards her. In fact, once he steps into the bathroom, he just kind of ignores her, so to speak. Like, he still talks to her, and she in turn talks to him, but it's what starts you can start seeing the hard exterior that Peridot's putting up start to break a little bit. Not to the point where she's suddenly not hostile anymore, but to the point where she's actually willing to talk to Steven. When Steven when she begins asking about the various aspects of the bathroom, he actually does talk to her honestly. When she asks about her limb enhancer, Steven actually is actually honest, and while she is clearly afraid, Steven does level with her and say, "Look, I know you're afraid, but we can probably help you." And while she's still clearly apprehensive, the fact that she actually tells Steven, "I appreciate the offer," at the very least you can tell she's starting to get a soft spot for Steven, because he's the only one of the crystal gems who's not treating her like the enemy. He's treating her like a scared child. And I'm not saying, and I know that sounds condescending, but he realizes the fear and is actually trying to be empathetic and understanding. He realizes from the get-go that there is something clearly going on that's got Peridot on edge, and so he's taking the time to listen. And while Peridot, like I said, is apprehensive, you can start to see that the kind of visage that Steven is throwing towards her is starting to essentially melt her ice cold heart, if that makes any sense. But so I do like that, and again, not much progress is made in the episode. By the end of the episode, they have not gotten any new information out of her. At most, all they know is that she came to Earth to check on something called the cluster, but you don't know what it is, why it's got her so afraid, and if it's got her, and as a result, the gems are still not really don't really have any new information they can work on. But at the very least, you can see that the beginnings are the beginning of this arc are starting to take root, and I like that. It's a nice little beginning, and it's good, and it is definitely a nice journey seeing what happens when Peridot stops trying to kill the gems and starts cooperating with them. So yeah, overall, Catch and Release I think is a nice beginning to Peridot's redemption arc, so to speak. So I like that overall. I do like it. So overall, I think those are nice. Again, I liked Sadie's song, like the build up, like seeing stuff with Sadie. I like the blow up. I do like having the heartfelt reaction when people actually start listening to her. Overall, I do think it's a good filler episode. Catch and Release, definitely a nice beginning for the next story arc. And actually has some good character stuff. Nice seeing Peridot. Nice seeing Peridot without her limb enhancers and have to rely on Steven and start opening up to him. Overall, both are good episodes in their own regard, and overall, I enjoyed them. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and tune in next week as we see more of the Peridorrito and her wacky shenanigans. So till then, I hope you have a good night, and I'll see you next week. Take care.